So here we go again with the Leslie Davis News Show. And thanks to Valerie Lockhart and our extensive team, audio, video, everything at MTN Studios, I'm able to bring you this important information. And I want you to pay close attention to everything I'm saying. Stop everything that you're doing. Listen up here now. The thing we're going to talk about right at the moment is the most important issue, money. People say, oh, money. You're always talking about money. And I said, well, what do you want to talk about? Money's important. When you get up in the morning, you got to give the kids money to go to school. You need money to go buy a cup of coffee. We need money to move along. People say, well, health is a lot more important than money. I said, well, we're not talking about something that we can't control. If you have your health, you have your health. You try to be careful. You try to take care of it. But money is something that we can do something about, and it's incredibly important. Where the money comes from and how it comes into circulation is the most important thing that you can understand. I understand the money situation, the money issue. And you need to pay attention because money in this country, the way we're handling it now, is all debt. And you can't pay debt with debt and get out of debt. That's one of our little mantras. I inherited that from Gregory Soderbergh. He's one of the advisors that I have on this money issue. He and Byron Dale, they head up a group called wealthmoney.org. And if you go to wealthmoney.org, you could get the answer to all kinds of questions. So this is, well, why aren't we doing money the way Davis and Soderbergh and Byron Dale and several others suggest? Well, that's because the people that are running this show are bullies, and they're stupid thinking that we're going to continue to go along with what we're doing. So we have legislation of how money should really be brought into circulation, and we should be handling it. Because you know yourself that if we continue to do the same thing with the money situation, we're going to have another debacle like we did 10, 11 years ago. That's what happens in this country since the early 1900s. Every 10 years or so, they create the people that manage the money, specifically naming the Federal Reserve. They cause these catastrophes and disasters. Put in a bunch of money, then extract the money and slow it up and raise it up. Because if all money is done as a loan, if they stop borrowing, or lending actually, there's no money for people to borrow. And if people don't borrow money, there's no new money comes into circulation. And anyway, even if the money did come into circulation, if it's a loan with interest, interest makes the debt grow, but it doesn't increase the money supply. Can you catch that? Interest makes the debt grow, but it doesn't increase the money supply. So where does the interest come from? If you're going to pay interest on a loan that you take, you have to capture that interest from somebody else's principal. Do you catch that? Do you understand that? And you can't continue to do that. We can't continue to pay interest on the debt. Let me give you an example. Suppose we're playing poker. You've got a poker game. And you see this in Las Vegas, when they play poker, there's a dealer. And that dealer takes some money out of each pot. So say we're playing poker and the house takes $1 or whatever the number is out of each pot. If you play long enough, whatever the number is that the dealer is taking out, or the house is taking out, whatever you play it long enough, the house will have all the money. That's how interest on debt works. You create debt out of nothing, the banks do. They don't really have the money to do that. You come in for a loan for a car or motorcycle, they lend you the money on that item, create the money in a computer, and now it exists. And now what they didn't have, you're paying interest on. So that's really the trap that we're in. But we have the money plan. I call it the Davis Money Plan. My colleagues call it the Transportation Act. But I like it the Davis Money Plan because I've worked on it for more than 10 years and I like my name attached to it. People recognize it. The Transportation Act sounds kind of benign or out there. I want to take ownership of the Davis Money Plan. And with that, here's what will happen and how it will benefit you and why you need to work closely with me on this. And let me tell you that this is how it will work. And if we work together and make sure that we pass the legislation to implement it, here's how it's going to work. It's going to slow the costs of living because, can't keep going like this. I said the other day, I paid a nickel to ride the bus when I was a kid, and the other day I paid $2.50, 50 times more. When my folks bought a house in the 30s, they paid, I think, $6,000, $7,000 for a house. That's now today, I think, probably about $450,000 to $500,000 in New York. Well, what caused that to happen? Well, that's inflation. That's what happens when you put money into circulation that has no basis and no substance. It's going to continue going up. So we have to bring in the money as a payment for production. We're going to produce roads and bridges, state of the art, and we're going to have the government pay for that. To tell the Treasury Department, you guys pay for those roads and bridges throughout America. We're not going to borrow for it. We're not going to bond for it. Bonding is just another word for borrowing. So that money will come into circulation with no interest and no debt. And it won't cause inflation because it's a payment for production. Okay, so now we're going to reduce the inflation and begin to stop it, inflation. We're going to stop the axle and fuel taxes on vehicles. So if you own a car, you're not going to pay fuel tax anymore. I think that's probably about 25 to 30 cents in Minnesota. But we're going to do this all over the country. We'll stop the fuel tax and the axle taxes. And we won't need it to build the roads because we're going to have the government bring the money into circulation and pay with no debt and no interest, no borrowing, to do all the roads and bridges. And after the axle tax and the fuel tax is removed and the inflation is under control, we're going to be able to get our hands around good jobs, a cleaner environment, less air pollution because we'll have the cars moving along instead of bumping into each other along the way, and lots of benefits for having great state-of-the-art roads and bridges. It'll help the environment, it'll help our economic situation. So that's the money plan, the Davis money plan, and I need you behind it completely. There's no reason that you don't get with me completely on this. The legislators, they're just ignorant of it. Some of them are stupid. Stupid is when you're just stupid and you don't understand something. Ignorance is when you don't know it or you haven't been taught it. So most of them are ignorant and a couple are stupid. You got Representative Davids from southern Minnesota down near La Crosse. This guy happens to be stupid. He's not ignorant. And he's stupid because he worked with me and he said he was going to follow through. He was going to have somebody that he was going to talk to about it, and they were going to advise him. And he didn't get back to us, me and my colleagues. We gave him information, we answered his questions, and he didn't follow through on it. So he's a stupid guy. He's not an ignorant guy. He's a real estate person. He's supposed to understand these kinds of things. So that's Representative Greg Davis, a mega fool. And he doesn't follow the money plan in the state of Minnesota. But we have others that will do it at the federal level. And that's why I'm running for Congress in the 3rd District in Minnesota. That's in the Bloomington, Edina, Minnetonka, Rogers, the western suburbs, and southern suburbs of the Twin Cities. And there's a guy named, Dean Phillips, that currently has the office. He has no ideas. He has no good positions on anything. So he should be pretty easy to beat. He only won the last time by about 56 to 46, something like that, when he beat the other person running. So I've got a good chance against him. I was going to run in District 5 against the Islamic terrorist Ilhan Omar, but I'm not going to do that because the DFL is pretty unbeatable in the city of Minneapolis because they've got enough socialists and communists and liberals that they usually have an overwhelming number of supporters and voters. So that's out of the question. So we're going to move on to the media reporting these things. I fed them the information numerous times about the money plan and how it works, and they don't even call back to find out and say, well, we've checked and it won't work or it doesn't work. They're just fearful of something. It might be the Federal Reserve, it might be the bankers, My colleagues say that the politicians won't support it because they're afraid of the bankers and they count on the bankers for a lot of their support. But you know, you can't pay debt with debt and get out of debt. So if our money system is all predicated on debt, we're really in trouble. So now it's been about 11 years since the last financial debacle happened, and they keep talking about it almost weekly or almost daily for that matter. When is the next recession going to come? It's like they're waiting for it. They're calling for it to happen because it's happened since the early 1900s. Every 10, 11, 12 years. It's not something that happens accidentally. It's caused by either withdrawing the money or tightening the money supply or putting in an excessive amount of money. That's controlled by the people that are controlling the money, generally the Federal Reserve and their banker buddies. So some of the situations that I talk about after the money issue and the politics of the thing are some of the things that are affecting people environmentally. You know, they're forcibly medicating our water without our permission by putting fluoride in it. So you think, oh, the fluoride, the dental community, they like that because it reduces the cavities. Well, they say it does, and if it does, and I don't believe it does, but say it does, it only does it in children. You don't need fluoride in the water for adults, but they do it. Once you put the fluoride in the water, you have to drink it. It's in your laundry, it's in your dishwashing, it's in your bathing, and with fluoride in everything. The scientific evidence, indisputable, shows that fluoride causes calcification of the pineal, some people call it pineal gland. It's the small gland in the brain, and I call it pineal because it looks like a pine cone. Call it pineal. It also calcifies the bones in the body. And some say, and my colleagues in the Fluoride Action Network, FAN is the acronym for the Fluoride Action Network, they talk about the calcification of the glands in the brain and the body contributes to the Alzheimer's problem. And that kind of makes sense, you know, that more water is fluoridated. Just about 2 years ago, the United States Environmental Protection Agency ordered the levels of fluoride reduced in the water. Well, if there's no problem with it, and there used to be a certain amount added, and then they cut back, well, how come? Well, because they know it's a problem, but they just don't have the good sense and good intentions in order to eliminate fluoride from the water. Because the fluoride comes, that they use in Minnesota particularly, from the phosphate fertilizer mines in Florida. The waste from mining, the phosphate that's used in fertilizer, is a hazardous waste. It's classified hazardous waste by the federal government. So it has to be disposed of either in a certain way, containerized and entombed in some permanent place, or sold, which is what they do. They sell it. The hazardous waste that they'd have to spend a fortune to get rid of, they containerize and sell it to the waterworks plants in Minnesota, and they put it in the water to forcibly medicate us. Well, what happens one of these days when we're not getting enough sleep or we're not behaving properly? They'll put other stuff in our water. We don't know what they're putting in the water. Just like when I was in the military, there were lots of rumors around as to what was being put in the water supply or in the food in the military in order to keep people under control. You know, by medicating people through their food, you're able to control them. That's why people are so lethargic and lazy and sleepy and stupid all the time, because we're medicated. We're either medicated through our water or medicated through our food. So keep your eye on the fluoride. And sometimes you'll see children, a lot of children, matter of fact, talk about 30, 40%, have little spots or streaks on their teeth. That's from fluoride. That's not from any mystery or not brushing or misbehaving. That's from fluoride, too much fluoride. It's in the water, it's in the food, you know, because if fluoride is in everything in the water, food processors and manufacturers, and if you go into a restaurant, you drink the water is fluoridated, the food is fluoridated. So we're getting all that fluoride in order to help the industry people get rid of their hazardous waste. Well, who owns that hazardous waste? It used to be Cargill in Minnesota was a big producer of this hazardous waste. But then they've sold off that branch of their company, and there are other people now that distribute it. I don't recall offhand the names of the company, but it doesn't matter. We need to get fluoride out of the water. On my website at earthprotector.org, you'll see the link of No Fluoride Minnesota, and you can go there and you can see a little video of it, or you can see the information about it and how to get the answers of the fluoride. Is it good or is it bad? We've got a little Q&A up there about that. So fluoride in the water, bad. You know, I read the other day about this fellow Julian Assange, who was with the WikiLeaks group, providing news for people around the world, WikiLeaks. And he reported, he's in prison now in England. That's a little story about that. But if you look up Julian Assange, you could read about him. They reported about this Collateral Murder is the name of the video in Iraq, where there were some helicopter pilots flying around, saw a bunch of guys in the street and machine gunned them and murdered them in the street. Just a horrible thing that went on over in Iraq. Murder in which they report these U.S. helicopter pilots murdering these people in the streets. And when people came to rescue one or two of the guys that were injured but still alive, they shot up the van that came to rescue the people. And when they did that, the U.S. government went ballistic because they don't want people to know the horrors that we've perpetrated on the people in Iraq, or we do throughout the world. It's nothing new. When I was in the military back in the 50s, back in the old day, they say that was the time we saw the last dinosaur in Minnesota. They'd send our own troops to stand in front of the atomic bomb blasts that were taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada. We were stationed in Arizona. They'd send troops over from Arizona to Nevada to stand in front of the atomic bomb blast to determine the outcome and see what happens to them. You know, a lot of the guys that would stand in front of the blast or in foxholes near the blast, that brush them off with whisk brooms. Maybe I've got some footage I can put up about that. I think I do, how they brush them off. Our own troops, our own people, sons, brothers, sons, brushing them off with the radioactive dust from the atomic bomb blast. Pretty sick, huh? So we've got Julian Assange, back to that subject for a moment. In my mind, he's a hero because he released a lot of information, but the U.S. government says he released secret information that harmed the government, and they're trying to get him back from England in order to put him in some dungeon, probably the Supermax out in Colorado, or maybe over in Guantanamo, where they can get him to squeeze some information out of him. Not good. Doesn't look good for Julian Assange, who's in that jail right now in England. But keep your eye on it, and you send a letter, send a note, let people know how you feel about that. Assange is going to need our help along the way. And he helped us by exposing the atrocities being committed by American troops in other parts of the world. And that stuff goes on all the time. You know, I admire a lot of our military and special forces, but not when they send them on missions to victimize and cripple innocent people that are friends of ours. Not a good idea. We spoke about some of these issues. Talk about health care, and we have to have health care for everybody and free health care. Well, if you've got people that are drinking alcohol and smoking on a regular basis, I mean, my goodness, there's not going to be enough money in the world to pay for medical care. It's not a question of health care. They're not taking care of their health. It's medical care that they're looking for. Free medical care. Well, if you're going to get free medical care and or free dental care, you have to have some share in that responsibility. If you're going to drink alcohol and you're going to smoke cigarettes and you're not going to brush your teeth, why should we take care of you? What responsibility do you have for that? To take somebody's money and give it to somebody else. We're going to take person X money in order to pay for the negative health effects that alcohol and cigarettes, high-fat diets, lots of salt, all that stuff are having on people. Now they're talking about the insulin prices going up. The insulin manufacturers are squeezing the people with the diabetes. Well, diabetes, some are inherited, but a lot of the diabetes has to do with diet. And a lot of it is caused by obesity. And obesity comes a lot from the high fructose corn syrup. If I had anything to say about it, I would forbid high fructose corn syrup sold to children in schools, whether in elementary school or whether in college. Anything that the government has any kind of influence or control over, we have to forbid high fructose corn syrup. This is it's poison. It's like fluoride in the water, allowing high fructose corn syrup in people's food. And they keep talking about the latest place that opened up, the new craft beer, and the latest beer. And we're going to stop for beers. Beer. What a country, huh? People sucking up the beer. And now these smoke. I saw a guy the other day, he was smoking on the corner. Not just smoking like a normal person, but it looked like a steam engine coming out of his mouth. Giant clouds of smoke from whatever it is that he's smoking. I don't know, it's some kind of liquid things, or they call it vaping, and just tons of stuff into there. What a stupid society, huh? This guy, but it looks ridiculous. It's not something attractive, that you would be attracted to. Say, oh, there's a cool girl. Look at the plumes of smoke coming out of her head. Out, I understand there's technology being developed where you can drive along the road and your car could be charging as you're driving along the road. You build that stuff into the roads, and we can do that with the Davis Money Plan. We'll build state-of-the-art roads and power up and have charging stations in rest areas, charge up the cars as they go along the road, collect the runoff to clean it before we put it into the wetlands. Could build solar and wind along the roads. Lots of opportunities to do that. So I'm optimistic that we can do this stuff. We just have to put people in charge that care and understand the issues, like myself. The people that are in charge, obviously, if Dean Phillips, the guy that I'm running against in District 3, if he knew anything, where money comes from and how it comes into circulation, he might do something about it. Or maybe he won't. Maybe people won't support him. Because his money, his fortune, comes from the same old way about generating money, about selling alcohol to people. That's how he generated his money. You want somebody in office whose base of his income or revenue or fortune of himself and his family was through selling alcohol, way back to the days when they were the bootleggers. Alcohol and drugs, the same thing. Alcohol is unhealthy. They say, well, we have to have a glass of wine with their meal. You don't have a glass of wine. You can have anything else that you can have water. You can have some kind of flavored liquid, as long as it's not high fructose corn syrup. So I don't know how long I'm going on here, but I'll be able to cut it and edit it and trim it along the way. But I want to hear from you. My number is up there. My website is up there. And you can call me. We can talk about these issues, about money and how we can do something about it, about the fluoride in the water. Lead poisoning continues to still be a problem. When we were fighting the lead issue, and I was a major force, Earth Protectors was a major force in forming the Lead Coalition to identify the lead problem, they'd like to say, oh, it's paint and the windows going up and down and the kids eating the paint chips. That was part of the problem. But one of the most important issues that was causing the lead problem was the automobile, the leaded gasoline deposited from automobile exhausts over the years that leaded gas was used. And we knew this, because boys would be more lead poisoned than most girls. Different, very out of whack proportion. Well, why is that? Well, because the boys are outside playing, and the touching of the soil and the football or the baseball or playing sports outside, and the hand-to-mouth activity with the leaded soil caused a lot of the lead problem. True that the paint indoor and the chips was a problem because the lead is kind of tasty, but most of it had to do with the leaded gasoline, and we pointed that out over the years. So we've got lead, we've got fluoride in the water, we've got terrible diets, a lot of salt, high fructose corn syrup. So we need to work together and we'll get healthier food. In Minneapolis here, where we have this Upper Harbor Terminal, a terrific 48-acre site on the river that's become available because the outfit that was in there has pulled out. We can now put on that site a lot of production of hydroponically grown organic food. We can put in lots of processing for the psychoactive, non-psychoactive hemp that's going to be grown throughout the state. Lots of business, lots of opportunities, but it's being taken over by some inside conspirators that have figured out how to steal this public land, like the Pohlad family and the Frank family, First Avenue Productions, and the Park Board. They've taken this 48-acre site that could be highly productive and beneficial and generating wealth for the future and lots of good jobs into a music venue. You know what a music venue is, a place that sells alcohol, to public urinating, prostitute chasing drunks every night, and want to give 19 acres to the Park Board and then build some unaffordable housing on the site. Well, that's not going to generate wealth. You're going to have housing and a park and a music venue. It's going to generate any wealth for the community, where the food that I talk about and the non-psychoactive hemp processing into hundreds of products, food and fuel and pharmaceuticals and oils and all kinds of pet food, human food, things like that. So I'm Leslie Davis. I'm the founder and president of the Earth Protector Environmental Group. It's not our logo, but I thought I'd wear our eagle shirt for today's show. And this eagle was drawn by Jan Attridge, famous wildlife artist. Jan drew beautiful eagles and wolves, and I believe she's up in Grand Marais these days. So you look up Jan Attridge in Grand Marais and praise her and help her and talk to her and contact her. Terrific wildlife game artist. So I'm going to go back to my computer and see if I can put all this stuff in above some of the images that I have about Julian Assange and the money, and they going to put in this collateral murder where the U.S. helicopter pilots machine gunned these innocent people in Iraq. So we need to stop that kind of behavior. I don't want to talk about Democrat or Republican. Peace is a non-political issue. And we can have peace if we're kind and generous and fair. And let's start thinking in that direction. Let's start thinking about peace, start thinking about wealth, money, as opposed to debt, and be in touch with me. And I hope to talk with you down the road. You can call me anytime, pretty much 24/7. Let me put up my 24/7 number, and I want to hear from you. Thanks for watching.